Good morning, everyone. I'm Kevin Allen, and I'm joined by my podcast partner, former NHL defenseman Tom Laidlaw, who played for about a decade with the New York Rangers and Los Angeles Kings. And this is the Laidlaw and Allen Report. We talk all things hockey twice a week. And Tom, plenty to unpack today.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of what I consider, interesting games last night.
Yeah.
And both of us, before we started the show, we trade back and forth topics that we want to talk.
Yeah.
And I found it fascinating that you and I both wanted to talk about the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and this is what I want to get your take on.
Yeah.
We have talked a lot about the Maple Leafs' inability to play a strong defensive game.
Yeah.
And that's obviously a problem that's been throughout this rebuild that they're in. They've developed an incredibly dynamic, interesting, fascinating, dangerous offensive team, but they haven't been able to master the art of a defense. But here they played the Tampa Bay Lightning last night, a team that is the best offensive team in the league, in my opinion. Plenty of talented players, and they beat them 2-1.
Yep.
Now that begs the question. Everybody's got a great system these days for playing defense. And, I don't know. I mean, you know more about it than I do, but I can't believe they vary too much on how you play defense. But isn't defense primarily just dedication and commitment? And is it possible that the Maple Leafs could just hold a team meeting, and I'm oversimplifying this, and say, boys, let's just everybody play defense and because look, if you want to prevent somebody from getting near the net, if you want to deny them shots, you just gotta
do it.
Focus on it.
Yeah.
So, what do you think? Could they do that in the postseason?
Well, yeah, I mean, a few things there. So there's always this talk, especially leading up to the trade deadline, they need to get more defensive players. And I think we talked about, my firm belief is it's not about getting different players. It's about these players growing and maturing, that they have the Marners and the Austin Matthews that are these great offensive players, and learning that if they want to win, they have to play an all-around better game. Steve Yzerman went through that. Mario Lemieux went through that. Alex Ovechkin most recently went through that. They'd learned how to win, and that means paying attention to playing defense. The same skill set that makes you a good offensive player can make you a great defensive player. In fact, make you a great defensive player. You look at Patrice Bergeron in Boston. Look at Mika Zibanejad here in New York now, what he's doing. So it's there. To me, you're right. It's getting together and saying, okay, guys, we need to play better defensively. But I'm sure they've talked about it already. But it's also no coincidence that last night they played one of the, if not the best team in the league last night. And they knew that Toronto knew that if they didn't play a better defensive game, they were going to get blown out of the rink. So they played a better defensive game. When you see them play a team that is not as good or offensively or is lower down in the standings, that's when Toronto seems to have a problem. They went 0-for-3 on the LA trip. They lost to San Jose, Anaheim, and the Kings, who are teams that are not going to make the playoffs. Then they come home and beat Tampa, one of the best teams. So to me, it's just it is simple. And that really, to be honest with you, I don't think that's a knock on the team. It's just it's a state of fact that they are a young team that needs to mature, and they will mature, and they'll be fine. And I think Kyle Dubas knows that. And we talked about this before. I don't think he wants to have this big grinded out team. He wants to have the Mitch Marters and the Austin Matthews and let them mature, and they'll be fine. So, they're the kind of team, I'll tell you, they get in the playoffs, and they may just go on a run. They've got good enough goaltending. They've got the ability to do what, if you want to score, win a game 8-7, they can do that. And obviously they've shown if they can play defense or need to play defense, they can do that as well.
Let's peel back some of the layers on this concept of defensive scheming.
Yep.
And, you hear it all the time. People saying, he entered.
I've lost Kevin there on his end, but I'm not sure if he loses me or not. But
oh no, I'm back. Okay. Anyway, we hear it all the time in the NFL. We're going to change the defensive scheme, and it seems like a really big deal in the NFL because obviously there are many different ways to play defense in the National Football League, and it comes down to how many people you're going to rush, how often you're going to blitz, whether you're going to play man to man or zone. It doesn't seem that complex in the NHL. So when I hear defensive scheming, and how we brought in and he put in a new defensive scheme, I got to ask you, like, is the Boston defensive scheme superior to the Maple Leafs, defensive scheme, or is it just the players in Boston are more committed to playing defense?
Well, we've used this word so many times, and it's so important in what I believe anyways, the culture. It's not the scheme as much as the culture. So it's like you mentioned off the top, it's the commitment to that scheme. You're right. Hockey is hockey. It really doesn't change that much. There are different, you go one man on man in your own zone. Do you want the wingers coming out high on the defenseman, those kinds of things? Do you want them to collapse to the front of the net? So there are some variations there. But at the end of the day, both the best coaches and the best teams are the coaches that get the players to understand it doesn't matter what the system is, it's how much you commit to play the system. I could have the best system in the world, but if you guys decide you're just not going to play it, it doesn't matter. So it's that culture. And again, here I go again with Boston, but it's Zdeno Chara and Patrice Bergeron. They play the system. They are in shape. They're professionals. They're leaders. So the other kids that come along really have no choice. When you come into that locker room, the coach says, here's what we're doing, and you do it. I witnessed it with Herb Brooks. I think I've told this before my rookie year in the NHL, Freddie Sherwood got fired halfway through the year. We did not have a great season, barely got into the playoffs. Craig Patrick had taken over the team. And then we went on a run in the playoffs. We went to the semifinals, ultimately losing to the Islanders. Well, typically when you have a run like that, you're not going to have a new coach come in, and you're not going to change much of the team. Well, Herb Brooks came in that following year after a good run in the playoffs, so proving that we had a decent team, and turned the team all around. We went from being a big physical team to the what we called the Smurfs back then, and a more of a skating team. And Herb had that way when he walked in the room that this is the way we're doing it. Either you're doing it this way or you're gone, and that's it. There is no question. I'm not asking you. This isn't a democracy. You don't get a vote in the subject. This is what we're playing, and we had success doing it that way. So that's the same thing with the successful teams. The Toronto Maple Leafs, that when they don't win, is the team that has decided we're just going to take shortcuts tonight. We're not going to stick to the system. So, yeah, I don't think it's that complicated there.
Wow. So what you're telling me is Herb Brooks was not Thomas Jefferson. He was a dictator.
He was a dictator. There is no question.
Yeah. No, I can believe that. I knew Herb obviously pretty well, and I loved Herb. He was just a fascinating man. Yeah. I want to also break down a little bit something you said that we sort of glossed right over. I don't know, a few weeks ago when we were talking about Mario Lemieux. I actually know it was in a story that I wrote where I quoted you about playing against Mario Lemieux. And you said, and you were a rock'em sock'em, defense first, dedicated, committed defensive player. Yep. That didn't mean that you didn't see yourself as Bobby Orr now and then and try to carry the puck up, but you were fully committed to playing defense. You knew what your role was.
Yep.
Now, what you said to me, and this is what I loved, is you said that Mario Lemieux was the only guy in the league that you weren't confident that you were going to be able to shut down.
Yep.
Now, what that said to me is because there were a lot of great players in the 1980s when you were playing. I mean, the point I want to raise is, if you were playing today, would you be intimidated by Connor McDavid's speed or any of that, or would you think, would you feel that you could shut him down?
Well, I would feel that I could shut him down, but with a player like that, it's more a team thing. It's not necessarily just one guy. You can't let him build up the speed coming through the neutral zone. You got to bang and crash. Now, it's different with today's rules too. Like even in the past, once you got to me, I could get the stick between the legs that go can opener move, and you can't do that anymore. You can't control him like that. So it's more, I would be confident against Connor McDavid if I knew that players around me have sat down and said, okay, guys, here's what we have to do to defend against all these, like Nathan McKinnon, Austin Matthews, all these guys, including Connor McDavid, that are so fast. It's that team game now. Again, slowing them down through the neutral zone. And the gap is so important. So for people that aren't familiar with that, so you're, as a defenseman, you're in the offensive zone. You're at the blue line. And now Connor McDavid is starting to come out of his offensive zone with the puck. Well, you want to get out of the zone quick enough so that you can defend him. But if you get out too quick, now you end up being so far back into your zone once it gets to your zone that even if he doesn't beat you one-on-one or go wide on you, now he's got that great scoring opportunity. He can shoot through you. So it's about closing the gap. It's about trying to stop the player, like trying to make contact with him at the blue line. So if he goes to make a move at the blue line, his opponent's going to go offside, all those kinds of things. But again, that's where, and this is a great example for Toronto. It's when those things are all possible to get done, and even more possible by the more talented players because they're better skaters. So that's all there.
Yeah, I guess the only thing, I mean, what the point I'm trying to get my arms around is the idea that there can't be a single team in the NHL that any other team couldn't make themselves believe we can shut them down if we all work together.
Totally. Absolutely. Yep.
Now, saying all that, I think the culture aspect of it really is important because when it becomes a tradition, it becomes habit. And I think, even good defensive play are simply developing good habits. If you don't develop the habit and you have to think about it all the time instead of becoming second nature, that's the problem. I mean, it'd be nice for us to say, well, they can just flick a switch and suddenly get better defensively. But if you haven't been doing it all season, every time you go on the ice, you got to think about it. Well, I got to watch my man better. I got to, get in his face. I got to stick to him like glue. I got to know what kind of chewing gum he's, chewing and all that. It doesn't work. So, it's an oversimplification. But the point of it all is, it's in the Maple Leafs to play better defensively.
Absolutely.
It is there, and we just saw it. We saw them be able to hold Tampa Bay to a 1-goal game. I'll leave it to coaches to decide whether or not it was a great defensive effort. Yeah. But it's a result-oriented business, and the Lightning got 1 goal.
Yep.
So they do a good job. But the thing about defense, I remember back in junior league football and everything, the playbooks would read, and I was always fascinated by this. If every man on the defensive playbook, or excuse me, on the offensive playbook, could say if every man does his job, every play should go for a touchdown. Right. And as soon as I read that, I thought, well, what it doesn't say is that if one guy on the defense does a good job, you're not scoring a touchdown. Right. So it really is kind of a team game. Anyway, you wanted to. I want to talk just about one more game too, and I think you'll want to talk about it too, even though you didn't bring that up. We've talked about the Philadelphia Flyers,
yes,
and how well they're playing. And I interviewed Keith Jones yesterday, and he was terrific about this team and talking and discussing this team and what's happened to make it better. And boy, he made a fascinating point. Like, they have the best home record in the NHL. They only lost, I believe, 5 times in regulation on home ice. It's pretty remarkable. Yep. And I brought up that historically it has been hard to play in Philadelphia for a while. Going back to, of course, the Broad Street Bullies, and subsequent years, just for different reasons. They're just always a hard team to play against, and the crowd gets into it, and you get fired up. So I asked him, why they're so good now at home, because, they don't have a super team. We all like their team. Mm-hmm. And he said is because they're a great matchup team. When they're at home and they could get Couturier matched up against, the top line, that's such a plus for them because he can shut down anyone. And Provorov on defense, when they can match him up against the top players, then they're just an exceptional team. And I thought that was fascinating. But anyway, so they're playing well. They were establishing themselves. We're all talking about them, and who they got to play. They got to play the Boston Bruins.
Big bad Bruins. Yeah.
Now, if I'm the Boston Bruins, and they've been good for a long time now, and everybody's talking about the Flyers, and I'm just sort of tapping the guy next to me on the shoulder and saying, let's show them.
We'll see.
And that's exactly what happened. A 2-0 game. Now, the Flyers are still exceptional and everything else. Yeah. But this morning, they got taken down just a half peg by a team that, has been a contender for a while and has been playing at a high level for several years. And, that's what I love about sports.
Well, that's our buddy Kevin Allen there. See if we get it back. But we're middle of talking about the Philadelphia Flyers, and here he comes. There he's back.
Yeah, that's I must have poor equipment or something, because it's
then the coronavirus is hitting the internet there. And
the coronavirus. That's a good segue, because I did want to ask you a little bit about that. as well. Like, it's getting serious. This morning, not that it wasn't serious last week, because it was, but this morning I was listening to the news, and the leader of Germany, Merkel, has said that they're counting on, expecting, believing that 70% of the people in their country are going to come down with the coronavirus. And all of a sudden they bring on some local experts, and they say that in America, we expect 60% here. 60%. Like, that's a lot of people.
Well, it's interesting, like living around here in New York, not just limited to New York, but the mass transit system, so you get on the train, you get on the subway, and you start to think to yourself, okay, all these other people, you don't know who has gone on, it's got it, what did they touch, what didn't they touch? So you can see you're right, it's going to spread. There's been events canceled out here. We were supposed to have 2 charity games here in the next couple of weeks that have been canceled. I think been canceled more out of safety concerns, but also because people are just not buying tickets to go to the events. They think they're just saying to themselves, we're just going to stay home.
Well, I mean, I don't know how close you are to New Rochelle, but that's on lockdown now, obviously. But I guess the reason I bring it up is I think we're headed toward playing some games when there won't be anybody in the stands. I thought it was just sort of a possibility that maybe we had to plan for, but it looks like it's going to be a reality before long.
And here now, again, obviously health is the most important thing, but from a business side, okay, so you don't sell the people now, are they going to give them refunds to the people for those tickets? Right. So
well,
if that then happens, that's revenue. It's a 50-50 split from the owners and the players. So now that money's coming out of the owners' pockets and the players' pockets too. So, I mean, I know that's not the most important thing.
No, it's not. But that's a story that needs to be reported. Like, this is going to hit the NHL harder than it would hit, say, Major League Baseball or the NBA, because we are still, even though the revenues have increased exponentially in the NHL, we're still a gate revenue driven league.
Totally.
The gate is key to us. One of the reasons the NHL has been so successful is, we play to a high percentage of filled arenas. I don't know exactly what it is, but it's in the high 90s. And so this is going to have an impact on the bottom line. And as you pointed out very accurately, as a former player and former agent, this is going to be felt from the pockets of both players and owners equally.
Absolutely. So obviously, all those decisions that are being made have to include the Players Association and the ownership group, right? And I'm assuming everybody's just and obviously the local governments are making decisions too, right? That they may just say, "Listen, you're not playing. We're not giving you an option. You're just not playing," right? So,
in San Jose, they tried to do that, and the Sharks said, "Nah, we're not playing anywhere."
Yeah, I'm trying to figure, I don't know. I guess was that more of a recommendation at that point? I mean, maybe it's going to get to the point where it's no longer a recommendation. It's listen, you're just not playing, right?
Yeah, I don't know though. I mean, we're getting to the point where, what can you really do? I'm maybe watching too much television coverage of this, but they were talking about what's going on in Italy, and it's basically a crime now in the larger cities to be too close to someone else on the street.
Sure.
They're asking everyone to be whatever the distance is, and I don't know what the distance is, but whatever it is, they're asking you to do that. And they've had police officers go up to people and say, "Hey, you gotta spread out." And so, but as the guy said, what are they going to do? They're going to arrest them? Well, the other thing too is they, and I just saw this for the first time. They're talking about, where are people in close proximity who have no choice? Prison. And
well, you know what? There's been a few. The TV series, the news has really covered that a lot about how they're wiping down. They're getting everybody to wipe down like 2 or 3 times a day inside the prisons. Yeah, that's a problem. And the homeless people too, because their health in a lot of cases, not always, is compromised. They're not living in a even close to a sterile situation. So. And nobody's there to take care of them either. They're on their own. They're obviously out there for a reason. So that's another issue.
Well, you got a plus because, you're such a health nut, number one. So that's real good. But, you live in an environment where germs breathe like crazy in that gymnasium in the workout place. And I, that little squirt of the bottle and one wipe across the bars, that doesn't do it anymore.
I know, and I'm not a big guy for washing hands at all. Like I grew up, I grew up on a farm where I was always exposed to germs. But I do find myself now, I wait till I leave the gym now, and on the way out, there's a bathroom there, and I go in and make sure I scrub myself down pretty good. So I'm much more aware of it. We were even supposed to, in our condominium complex here where we live, they want to run inspections. They're yearly inspections that they do of all the units. I sent them an email. Are you kidding me? We're in the middle of a pandemic or whatever you want to call it now. It's you're not doing the inspection here, so they're not allowed to come in my spot. So,
yeah. Well, let's talk about a couple other things. Hockey, you want to get off? That's a bunch of dour news that I think we have to be vigilant about. And I think the sports world does have to kowtow to reality here, and whatever is recommended by the people who understand this. Because if we stop one person from dying, it's been worth the effort. So I hope we continue to be and go along with what the health officials have to say about it. Just a real fun story before we I want to talk about the Nashville Predators, but I saw a cute story yesterday. Larry Walker, who's going into the Baseball Hall of Fame, as you may remember him. He played. I think he played with the Expos and the Colorado Rockies. Left-handed hitter, sweet swing, right fielder, good arm. It should have been in my opinion, Hall of Fame for baseball a while back. But what's sometimes forgotten about Larry is that he is a Canadian boy, BC kid, who was a goalie till he was, 13 or 14. And some people thought he could have gone either way. He's a great athlete. Maybe not. It's hard to project what would have happened. But anyway, he chose baseball. But he is going apparently, and maybe this is just a publicity stunt because the likelihood of him ending up. But he's going to be the emergency backup goalie for the Colorado Avalanche, and he's going to be listed as such. And like I said, because he's going in the Baseball Hall of Fame this year, I think this is a publicity thing, but I think this is a great story.
And, absolutely, yes.
And I think it'll be fun for him to probably go out and practice the day before with the team and all that. And so, if you're a Larry Walker fan, pay attention to that. I don't know exactly when it is, but it's coming up here, and I'm sure there'll be more exposure on that. And I think it'll be a fun little story.
Yep.
But let's get to the Nashville Predators, who had a win last night. And I did a story yesterday, Tom, where I broke down what I thought the Predators have to do to get in the playoffs. And what's interesting is they were at 1 point out when I wrote the story. And, that is such a jumbo down in the bottom of the Western Conference in the wild card race that I really believe that, if they went 10-4 in their last 14 games, and they won last night, so now it would be 9-4. I think they're guaranteed to be in.
Yeah,
and I think they may get in it if they can go 8-5, because you look at what's going on down there, and in the last 10 game span, we had Minnesota go 7-3.
Yep.
But they're not in yet because the Predators went 6-3-1. And Winnipeg went 6-3-1. Now Winnipeg lost last night, so they're out. So I don't think you're going to have to make that 9-1 run to get in, because everybody's sort of beating everybody. And if you can just keep your head a couple feet above water, I think you'll get in.
Yeah, and this is kind of, I hate saying it like this because we're both such good friends with David Poile, the general manager there, and love the work that he does. But you got two sides of that coin, right? You look at Columbus, who is just trying to stay in the playoffs themselves, and you're cheering for them because of all they've been through, all the injuries, all the players they've lost. You want them. It's a great story. With Nashville, I'm almost like, okay, if you get in, I'm almost mad because you shouldn't be getting in. You don't deserve to get in. You have a fantastic lineup there, and you haven't played well enough all year long. You talk about being not committed to playing defense and not committed to play the game. That team has really cornered the market there. They had to fire the coach, a coach that had already won a Stanley Cup in Lavalette, and now they're fighting for a playoff spot. So for the fans of Nashville, yes, we're happy for you, but that team shouldn't be battling for a playoff spot. They're good enough that they should already have a spot not totally lined up, but in much better position. So they are. So it's just like, and they're another team to me, just like Toronto is, that they're talented enough that if they get in the playoffs, you hate to call them a dark horse because they're so talented. I think we went back to the start of the year. I think you look at Nashville as a potential, one of the favorites to win the cup. But now, because they've had an off year, he's almost like a dark horse. But they're talented enough that it shouldn't be that way. They should be a team that's gearing up, getting ready for the playoffs instead of just fighting to get in.
Yeah, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this too. I'm a little concerned about David Poile. What if they miss the playoffs for the first time in 6 years? I mean, he's in his 70s, and he really likes this team, and he has said it's one of the better teams he thinks that the Predators have had in his. He's been the only GM that franchise has had, but I would think he would be fine if he'd get a mulligan if they don't make it. But in this day and age, you don't get the loyalty that you used to get. So,
and my guess with that situation, maybe one of those deals where they move him up to like a president's, alternate governor kind of role, and they bring in another GM underneath him, really, right? Where he does not making the hockey decisions, but he's still in the organization. I would see something like that happening, but I agree with you. It's just he's done so much.
Guys like him and Lou Lamoriello, they just can't handle that.
Yeah,
that would be too hard for him. He's got to.
What's the alternative though? Fire him?
No, you're right. Yeah. I mean, they'll offer him that, but I just think that would be hard on him. Yeah. To be sure. But I'll tell you, this was my take on what's got to happen for the Predators to get in, and I think it's been lost a little bit this season. Is their top players. We're talking Philip Forsberg, who I think is a 30-goal scorer. He's done it a couple of times. He's been at 25 plus a couple of other times. Arvidsson, Ryan Johansson, and Matt Duchene.
Yep.
None of their players are having an exceptional year. Yep. And the one, and I don't know if we want to call it subtle, but it hasn't received much attention. The one change that Hines has made, John Hines, since he took over from Laviolette, is their playing time is down. Sure. Because he's in a reward punishment type system. Yep. You produce, you play a lot. If you don't play. So the minutes are down. I looked in. I think it was Ryan Johansson. Played under 14 minutes a couple of games, and he doesn't have the big line together anymore. He's got it all spread out, and I think at least 3 of those 4 have got to play down the stretch for them to get in. And I saw Forsberg, who went 17 games without a goal, and then got a goal. I think he got 2 more last night. Yeah. So, he seems to have understood that he's got to carry the flag a little bit. And I think their specialty teams, Tom, have been among the worst in the league. And usually it's one or the other. They've been bad at both penalty killing and the power play. And is that just luck? Like,
no, it's a bunch of guys that are not committed properly. And those 4 guys you mentioned, the 2 in particular, Johansson, who I love as a player, I think he's a fantastic player, but he has had a reputation in the past that seems to be creeping back in his game now, where he's not totally committed. Like, he's not sacrificing for the team. We touched on him earlier in the year, taking a bad elbowing penalty during a game that was needless. It hurt the team, hurt him. And Matt Duchene is the same way. When I watch him play, I think, what a fantastic athlete. But he, no matter where he's been, whether it's Colorado or Ottawa or in his brief stint there in Columbus or here in Nashville, I just haven't seen a guy that has understood now about what it is to be part of a team and to win as a team. It's a fantastic athlete, totally skilled, but I don't see that total commitment yet. And that to me, that's reflective of special teams, because penalty killing, you don't have to have the best players. You have to have the right players that want to participate. They are coachable. They work as a group, because you got to work as a unit of 4 players on the ice, especially in your own zone. You got to be willing to block shots, move your feet, all those things, and that's just not there with that team. That's why I say, like, hey, guys, you're better than that. You're a much better hockey team. You should be getting more out of your team. You should be getting more out of yourself as individuals, and that's why I look at Columbus, the opposite, and you say, well, those guys are getting everything out of their game. They're squeezing every last ounce they've got out of their team, and they're just hanging out for a playoff spot. Nashville's doing the exact opposite. So.
Well, I also think the one other thing that I'd like to see from the Predators is, when you look at that team, and I'm going to sound like somebody that saw too much hockey in the 1970s, but when you look at that team, there's a lot of smaller players, and they don't have a lot of physical players, big physical players. But I will say this, and I made this point. Tenorti, who has suddenly sort of made his presence felt. He's 6'6", as I recall, and I thought it was interesting that it was Perry, Corey Perry, who injured
Roman Josi, right?
No, it was
oh yes, in the outdoor game, yeah.
Ryan Ellis, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Was it Ryan Ellis?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, and then Arvidsson, it was Bortuzzo in St. Louis who took him out, and Bortuzzo got suspended for that, and both those players were gone for extended periods, and the next time they played that, Tenorti held those two players accountable. I don't even think he was there when it happened, but he knew what he was supposed to do, and Hines has used Tenorti in a pairing with the guy Halzer, who they got from Anaheim, who's 6'3" as well. And I've noticed when those two are on the ice, suddenly the Predators play a little braver. And I think that they are going to have to play a little tougher. Because they have at least 8 guys who are like 5'10".
They can draw other guys into the fight. I mean, that's what those tough guys do, right? I mean, they go and initiate stuff. Now the heat gets cranked up a little bit more, and all the guys they've got no, especially in a playoff series, you really have you have to get involved in it. So, yeah, I agree. I love when that happens, and it just. Again, that's that. Like I said, Toronto, Nashville, those two teams, man. If they ever decide to figure out that they know they want to win, they can win. They've got to be committed to it. So,
yeah. Well, as often as the case, the time has moved by way too quickly. We're beyond the time here. We appreciate you listening to us, and we'll be back next week with a new edition of Laidlaw and Allen Report.
See you next week, guys.